The U.S. and Saudi Arabia trading accusations over oil supply cuts. The U.S. now claiming Saudi Arabia pushed other OPEC Plus nations to vote to cut oil production last week. Yahoo Finance senior columnist Rick Newman is here with the details. Rick, Saudi's looking to send a message to the United States?
It seems that way. They are not doing the United States a favor here, and they're being pretty overt about it. So let's recall President Biden did make a pilgrimage, if you will, to Saudi Arabia over the summer. This is after he called the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman a pariah for orchestrating the murder of Jamal Khashoggi 4 years ago. So Biden basically went over to make amends, and we know he did that because he wanted Saudi Arabia to pump more oil to get prices down and help with the economic war against Russia. So Saudi clearly has been behind this agreement by the OPEC Plus nations, which includes Russia, by the way, to actually cut production rather than increase production. So now Biden says there will be consequences for this. The Saudi Foreign Ministry, this was unusual. They actually released a statement a couple days ago saying we're pushing back against these allegations that we're trying to help Russia out. These were purely for economic reasons that we want to cut production. And you've got a lot of members of Congress now, including some senators who run important committees, saying we need to do something like curtail arms sales to Saudi Arabia or find other ways to basically punish them for this decision. So it's getting ugly.
So then, Rick, in terms of actual leverage, obviously there tends to be a lot of rhetoric when these things come up, but in terms of what can actually be done, how much leverage does the US have, either on its own or if it teams up with allies on this?
The United States is a major arms supplier to Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia needs those weapons because they have a militant foe right across the Arabian Gulf in Iran. Saudi Arabia and Iran are long sworn enemies, and there has been kinetic military action between those two nations in the past. So they need American weaponry, including things like Patriot air defense missile batteries. So the United States could remove some U.S. weapons that are there to help defend Saudi Arabia. The United States could also decide not to sell Saudi Arabia weapons and say, well, why don't you go to your buddy Russia and get weapons from them? Of course, Russia's running out of weapons because they're firing all their own weapons at Ukraine. So that's one thing the United States could do, but it might backfire in terms of the oil markets because we are just going to be somewhat dependent on oil-producing nations such as Saudi Arabia, because in those nations, the government decides how much oil to produce. That is totally different from what happens here. The U.S. government cannot go to Exxon or Chevron and say, you need to increase oil production by 10% or 20%. And here in the United States, energy firms, they do not want to invest in huge fossil fuel energy projects anymore because they don't think they're going to get their money back. They know this is a declining industry. The Saudi government, on the other hand, can keep making those types of investments. So in the future, I think governments like Saudi Arabia could be even more important to fossil fuel industries than they are now. So President Biden has to think about the long-term consequences of anything he's likely to do.
Certainly a delicate balancing act indeed. Thanks for breaking that down for us. Our very own Rick Newman. Have a good weekend.